Overnight, at least one U.S. airport had no air traffic controllers on duty as staff began calling out sick amid the government shutdown. Burbank Airport's tower was unmanned Monday evening, with a team in San Diego taking over operations.
Clearance is closed, ground's closed, local's closed. The tower is closed due to staffing.
California Governor Gavin Newsom slamming President Trump on X, writing, "Thanks at Real Donald Trump, Burbank Airport has zero air traffic controllers from 4:15 to 10 p.m. today because of your government shutdown." Air traffic controllers are required to work through the shutdown, but will only be paid retroactively once it ends.
What they think about as they're controlling our airspace is, how am I going to pay my mortgage? How do I make my car payment?
The staffing shortages triggering delays at major airports across the country, including Newark, Denver, and Phoenix. Smaller airports could also be affected. The Transportation Department says funds for the program that allows air carriers to service rural areas will expire next week. Prior to the shutdown, the FAA had already been facing staffing shortages. The Air Traffic Controllers Union saying it will continue partnering with the Department of Transportation to supercharge controller hiring and ensure America's aviation system remains the safest and most efficient in the world.
I've been hearing about people that work in the aviation industry. Some TSA members. I don't know how true it is for TSA members. I seen one girl that was saying that she was a little bit bothered by the shutdown. She didn't actually say what she did, but she was on social media and she was talking about the shutdown. And she was saying that even though you furloughed, that it was hurting her because she needed money immediately. And so what she was trying to do was she was trying to get into gig work so that she can cover herself while still working her regular job and paying for her to get to and from. Also, on the fact, on top of that, she was a single mother, and she was saying that she was just needing money to float her. I know during the auto workers strike, right? They had like special programs where like credit unions and stuff would loan them money and bridge them until they actually got their next paycheck and stuff like that, and they got back to working once they got things back in order. But for furloughed employees, it's a little bit different because you are actually still getting paid. You're just going to get that back pay. You're going to get that retroactive pay. And so once your check hit, it's like going to be one big check because you're going to have a bunch of checks all combined into one. But the one thing that I'm trying to understand, though, and that I can't figure out is that we see the threat, at the very least, a threat of a government shutdown regularly, at least once a year, maybe twice. At least once a year, maybe twice. So here's my question. If you do a job, right? Because I know that there's a lot of people, according to studies, up to 60% of people is living paycheck to paycheck, right? And if you do a job where you know that it's a possibility of a government shutdown and you see this coming, it seemed like people would better prepare themselves. No? No? Keisha says, when I lost my job the last time, I learned always have a side hustle or a second job to have extra money. I'm chilling with this government shutdown. See, there you go. And then when you get that bag, you get that bag. You know what I'm saying? Air traffic controllers, they say that they make a crazy amount of money because they work so much overtime. Air traffic controllers, they're also saying that they are tired. They don't want to work as much overtime. They want days off. They want some more people. Have anybody ever considered going into air traffic control? I know that it's like a very important job. There's a lot of places. I was talking to somebody and I was telling them, I said, because they was talking about going to Vegas and all of this stuff. And I said, yeah, I'm kind of sitting tight for right now. I got a couple trips planned soon. I'm pretty sure that the government will be open at sometime next month. Again, I was telling y'all that I'm supposed to go to Croatia. That should be interesting. That should be interesting. I'm supposed to be going to Croatia next month. So I don't know how that's going to work out with all what we got going on over here and all of that. But you know me, I'll adjust. But this government shutdown, it seemed like people would be better prepared for it, no?
America's aviation system remains the safest and most efficient in the world. President Trump is now calling on Democrats to
Is it,
reopen the
Eric B?
government, writing on Truth Social.
One of
I
the
am
most
happy to work
stressful
with the
jobs in the
Democrats on
U.S.?
their failed health care policies or anything else, but first they must allow our government to reopen. Earlier, he implied
300,000?
negotiations are already underway.
We have a negotiation going on right now with the Democrats that could lead to very good things.
But Democratic Senate Leader Chuck Schumer denying any talks are happening, saying it's up to the president to end the shutdown.
He's in charge. His party holds majorities across the government. So Americans naturally and correctly believe the burden is on him to fix this mess.
What you believe has nothing to do with the truth. Ain't y'all tired of Democrats lying to y'all? Y'all not tired of Democrats lying to y'all? It doesn't matter if we control all three branches of government, you still need 60 votes, which means that Democrats have a role to play in keeping the government open. And they're supposed to be negotiating and debating throughout the year. That's your job, not just at times where there's deadlines. Your job as a Democrat is to make sure that you keep the government open while also negotiating and crafting policy that would benefit Americans. But they failed over and over again. And you know what the worst part about this whole situation is? When you see what they're fighting for. When you see what they're fighting for. Hakeem Jeffries had no problem whatsoever reminding y'all that furloughed employees will be repaid, because he's basically communicating with you guys to dig in your heels, because we want to fight for this free health care coverage for illegal migrants, especially when they go to the hospitals. They not fighting for a stronger neighborhood. They not fighting for anything that's meaningful for you. They are fighting for, and they going to try to frame it and make it seem like, nah, we fighting for the American people. They don't even care about you. Democrats hate you. Democrats, in my opinion, monetize and hate the American people. Democrats, in my opinion, you know what a Democrat is? A Democrat is an abusive spouse. I will never in my life, not one day ever in my life, I promise you, you're going to have to be a transformational, middle of the road, old school, 1993 Democrat for me to ever consider voting for a Democrat. Now, I'll have to vet through which Republican candidates makes the most sense, because I think that there's a lot of rhinos. There's Republicans in name only. But good God, Democrats are like an abusive spouse, bro. Like, you don't realize that they don't love you, but you are so used to being attached to them that you think that them putting their hands on you is really showing love. Oh no, they just love me. Man, now you don't know what love is. And so what I've seen most people that are liberal, left-leaning, I seen it in the comments on my Instagram today. They're like abused spouses. And when we try to free them and we try to convince them and say, hey fam, look, they're not doing nothing for you. Your neighborhoods are still ruined. Your entire life you've been voting the same way. They've controlled the presidency for the last 16 years, or 12 out of the 16 years. And what have you gotten from it? What have you gotten from it? 12 out of the last 16 years, they've been in the White House, and somehow all of it just became Trump's fault. They're an abusive spouse. Now they got the government shut down. They advocate more and they fight harder for illegal migrants than they actually fight for you guys. The only reason they was concerned about your neighborhoods, because it's not like they drive through. Bro, they don't do press conferences in y'all neighborhoods. They're not trying to see what y'all talking about. They don't care nothing about you. The only reason that they care about the hood right now is because it's illegal migrants in there. They're just an abusive spouse. And it's not until you stay away from them for a little while and you get to see what a regular relationship looks like that you then are able to just say, you know what? What? They're the worst, bro. They're the absolute worst ever. Ever. This is Hakeem Jeffries. Today, I believe, talking about the government shutdown and the latest. And I'm pretty sure, I haven't seen this, but I'm pretty sure he's going to say the same talking points.
Chuck Schumer is saying this is getting better for us every day. That's not somebody who wants to see this get resolved. And they are pandering to the left-wing special interest groups out there who have demanded this and demanded this showdown with the President of the United States. And so we've got a bill, as I've said, that's passed the House, that's sitting at the desk in the Senate that we could pass today, put it on the President's desk, he would sign it into law, and this shutdown whole fiasco ends, and people can get back to work.
That was Senate Majority Leader John Thune on Squawk Box just a couple of minutes ago. Now we're going to get some reaction and his thoughts about where this all heads from House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. Good morning to you. We'll start there. What do you make of those comments?
Well, our view is that we will sit down anytime, any place with anyone here at the Capitol or back at the White House, including with the President, in order to reopen the government, find a bipartisan path forward to enacting a spending agreement that actually meets the needs of the American people and improves their quality of life as opposed to hurting everyday Americans. And of course, anything that we do has to decisively address the Republican health care crisis that is real. It's not fake. It's not irrelevant. It's not random. It's a real health care crisis, including the urgent need to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits for tens of millions of Americans who are about to experience dramatically increased premiums, copays, and deductibles.
How come they don't call it Obamacare anymore? Have y'all noticed that they don't even label it Obamacare anymore? They call it what it was named, the Affordable Care Act. We need to extend it. I think that we need to tear the healthcare system down entirely and rebuild it from the ground up, because the one thorn in our side is that you see a lot of these liberals running around talking about how they deserve healthcare. Have y'all seen Canada's system, how destructive it is? I know people that come down to America to actually see a doctor. You can't even see a doctor in Canada unless you are in an emergency, and then you stuck in an emergency room sometimes for hours before you can actually see somebody to address your issues. And then the emergency rooms become overwhelmed because people can't do preventative care and see a doctor because it is sponsored, government sponsored, which means that they're going to tax you out of your socks. And then you got these socialists running around and these middle of the road Democrats that continue to try to push for Obamacare. Obama. Hey, Hakeem. Hey, Hakeem. They tell me you're trying to be like me. Yeah? Yeah. You can do better. You can do better. They call you Timu Jeffries. Well, talk to Michelle. Michelle said no. She doesn't really care for it. Horrible.
Because of the Republican refusal to act.
Right. I appreciate your position on the healthcare issue. The question I have is,
and they never actually give you any real context. It's just real general. Extend Obama healthcare. And Trump is mean.
Chicken going on here, and I think it was expressed in many ways by Senator Schumer in terms of how strategically there is a view among Democrats that the longer you can hold out,
we'll look at that shortly,
perhaps the better chance you have either to get what you want or to push the Republicans into some kind of other place. And my question to you is how you think about that, given the trade-off, of course, which is all of the government workers which are currently being furloughed and not being paid.
I think that Leader Schumer and Senate Democrats have taken a strong and principled position for all of the right reasons in the face of this Republican health care crisis. Remember, this is something that has been ongoing from the very beginning of this Congress. The largest cut to Medicaid in American history, forcing, we believe, 14 million people off of health care coverage. Hospitals and nursing homes and community-based health clinics are closing right now, all throughout the country, including in rural America, because of what Republicans did in their one big ugly bill. Medicare is facing a possible cut of $536 billion at the end of this year if Congress doesn't act, connected to that toxic piece of legislation that Republicans enacted, which hurts everyday Americans in order to reward their billionaire donors. with massive tax breaks. And by the way, those tax breaks were made permanent. And then now we're facing the Republican refusal to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits in an environment where the cost of living is already too high, and Donald Trump has broken his promise to lower costs on day one. And by the way, on top of all of that, medical research has been effectively ended in the United States of America. And in this Republican appropriations bill on the House side, they want to cut funding for the Centers for Disease Control by $1.7 billion and cut funding for the National Institute of Health by $500 million. This is extraordinary stuff. And we are simply not going to go along to get along the Republican effort to continue to gut the health care of the American people. This is a cost of living issue, and it's a life or death issue for millions.
Did y'all see Hakeem Jeffries absolutely get destroyed directly to his face? Let me see if I can find that.
Millions of Americans.
Senator, but we're talking about a continuing resolution to keep the government open and then going into the normal appropriations process. I mean, there was an election, and the Republicans were put in a position where they were able to pass the big, beautiful bill, or you call it the big, ugly bill. To then say, we don't like any of that, so we're going to shut down the government until you take back all the things that you duly passed through legislation. If Republicans had tried to do that to the Inflation Reduction Act or the any of the acts that Biden and that administration have passed, if they said we're going to shut down the government because we don't like any of those things you did, we're going to not pay our military, we're going to, not allow the government to reopen until you do what we want. After an election where the American people put Democrats in power, you'd be going crazy. You'd be going crazy about using a shutdown of the government with a continuing,
He's actually right.
continuing resolution to get what you want just because you don't like what the Republicans did. It's not how it works. It's bad. It's bad precedent, and it's just clear. And you're talking about the House. You've already passed this. The Senate is who we're talking about, and they have a bill which will reopen the government right now with 5 more Democrats.
What is bad precedent is the Republican refusal to engage in bipartisan negotiations.
This guy's like a robot, bro. He's a Manchurian candidate, man. He just got read the riot act, and it was direct. He said, if this had happened to y'all when Biden was in office, you guys would be crying foul and you would be losing your minds. And he has no response. And so what he's going to do is say the same thing over and over. What's bad is Republicans refusing to come to the table, come with a bipartisan bill to make sure that the government stays open and that most of the people can stay on health care coverage, because you're going to see an explosion of co-pays and the amount of money people have to pay to make sure that they can feed their families. Same thing over and over again.
What is bad precedent is the Republicans embarking on a my way or the highway approach from the very beginning of this Congress. Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. Joe, you're exactly right. So if the government shuts down, they've made the decision to shut the government down.
What? You still need 60 votes. Oh, Timu Obama. Oh, man. I hate these people. I genuinely hate them.
And they can reopen it right now if they chose to, with a rule change in the Senate. But I just explained it. The reality is they want to keep the government closed. Cruelty from the very beginning of this administration has been the point. And the responsible thing to do is to sit down and negotiate a bipartisan path forward to address a very...
It's like they get handed a sheet with talking points and they just stick to those talking points. No matter what points you make, no matter how you renegotiate, no matter what you say to them, no matter whether or not you bring them to the front of the congregation, they stick to the same talking points over and over again.
real health care crisis that's upon us right now. Open
Minority
enrollment
Leader,
starts
can you
on
do that?
November
Can you do
1st.
those negotiations while the government is reopened? I think that's the offer that's been on the table. We did hear
He's going to say the same thing.
Mike Johnson talking about how, look, he passed a clean CR. There's not really much for him to politic in because there's nothing to take out. Any Republican pork that they pushed into this to take out of it to offer as a way of getting around this. Can you reopen the government and have these conversations if there's a willing party on the other side, which it sounds like there is if you talk to some of the Republicans who see this as an issue in their district as well?
Well, certainly Marjorie Taylor Greene has made clear that it's a very real issue. It's an issue that Republicans have ignored throughout this year, and it's an issue that needs to be addressed right now. Mike Johnson has made the representation, including at that White House meeting that we had last week, after Chuck Schumer and I reached out to demand that we have the conversation. Unfortunately, it took place literally a day before the government shut down because Republicans have refused to engage in bipartisan negotiations or even conversations up until this point. And our view is, what Johnson said is that health care is an irrelevant extraneous issue. No, it's not an extraneous issue. It's a central issue. And we need to deal with it right now. And we're willing to sit down and have that conversation. We want to reopen the government.
But you're not going to fix this. That's a negotiation that is going to take a very long time. Employees, including the military, are not going to get paid on October 15th. Can you have these negotiations?
And that's an issue that we believe should. And that's an issue that we believe should be dealt with respect to our troops in a bipartisan way, in a manner that it has been dealt with in the past in previous shutdowns,
in the past, you've had appropriations
in
bills
October
that had already
of
been
2013.
For the right.
I'm talking about in October of 2013, where as a standalone issue, the military pay for our families and men and women in uniform was dealt with. That's what I'm making reference to. So who should get paid besides the military? You think the TSA agents should get paid? Where does the line stop for who gets paid and who doesn't? The law requires everyone to be paid, and unfortunately, Donald Trump has once again suggested that no one is going to get paid, which to me is consistent with the efforts to undermine the rule of law that we've seen from this administration from the very beginning. Listen, our position just remains clear. We just want to have a serious bipartisan discussion about reopening the government and enacting a spending agreement that meets the needs of the American people. And we disagree with the notion that the March partisan continuing resolution, which they put before us once again, is actually clean. No, it's not. We opposed it in March because it represented, in our view, an attack on veterans, an attack on nutritional assistance, an attack on women, infants, and children funding, an attack on housing affordability, and an attack on health care. That's not a clean continuing resolution in our view, and it was not bipartisan. Certainly that wasn't the case in the House.
But Leader Jeffrey, I mean, we know that there are, varying opinions on both sides of the aisle, sharply differing opinions on how to do everything. And you've just outlined a lot of things that Democrats, a lot of problems they have with Republicans. Republicans have a laundry list of things that happened during the Biden administration that they feel the same way about. And I guarantee if they had shut down the government and said, we want a bipartisan talk on doing all this, but what Republicans want, Democrats, their hair would have been on fire. Democrats would have said that's not the way to do it. You can't do it through a government shutdown. And now you're employing that same tactic on what I'm sure you feel are very important issues, but it just looks like politics as usual to a lot of people.
I think this is very personal for the American people who are at risk of literally experiencing thousands of dollars.
Somebody honestly should just be like, hey man, are you listening to what I'm saying? Or are you programmed? Hey, can somebody wipe his programming so that you can actually have a conversation like a regular person? Are you hearing the words that are coming out of my mouth? You make sure that the government is funded. You make sure that you continue to negotiate after the government is open so that you can get a clean slate of what it is that y'all expect in a bipartisan agreement. What is there so hard to understand about this? This is not rocket science.
increase in their health insurance in a manner that will bankrupt many folks or deprive them of access to health care. We're talking about a married couple of two individuals, for instance, that makes $88,000 a year, currently receives tax credits from the Affordable Care Act and pays about $8,000 a year.
Up to 20.
Now, this is a situation that's
88,000
already
to go
unaffordable.
up to 22, 23,000.
But their premiums may actually triple to $24,000 a year. Unable.
I've heard every last one of these talking points over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. I will never, under any circumstance, in any capacity, vote for a Democrat ever again. I can't, bro. They're insufferable, literally insufferable. And I think that Hakeem Jeffries, who I don't know who keep putting him in front of the camera. Why do they think that this guy is the next up? I can't stand these Democrats, bro. And again, I think that the Democrats of yesteryear was much different than the ones that we're dealing with now.